Hello, everybody. Welcome for another episode of How We Special Needs. And we have Simone today. Welcome, Simone.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It's amazing how I got in touch with Simone through Disinfluenza, her amazing agency that we are going to talk about later, definitely. But Simone, you have your own journey with special needs and
Yeah.
disabilities. Can you tell us a little bit more about what brings you today with us? What condition do you guys are coping with?
Yeah. My son Josh was born with congenital nephrotic syndrome Finnish type, which is obviously a genetic disease affecting his kidneys. So yeah, we had this little baby, a beautiful little baby, first baby, and we're doing all the things. And we were living in Alice Springs, and he had a hip brace on. He was born preemie. Looking back, all the signs were there. But yeah, he was born preemie. He had this hip brace on, so he was never weighed. And when his hip brace came off, his belly was quite distended. And so the nurse is like, that's not right. So within a day, we went from the nurse to the hospital to being admitted and being diagnosed with what he was diagnosed with, congenital nephrotic syndrome Finnish type, which is, I guess, in simple terms, his kidney leaks all the protein out of the kidney, which sat in his body as fluid. And the way that was treated was with an albumin infusion every day, which then pushed all the liquid out. And just doing that every day. Now, obviously, when your kidney is leaking all its protein, that is not good for you to grow and develop. By the age of around 6, most kids with congenital nephrotic syndrome Finnish type require a kidney transplant, which is just another form of treatment, not necessarily a cure. And Josh made it to 4, and he got pneumonia. It was pretty severe, very sick, and that pushed him into end-stage renal failure, which then he had 7 months of hemodialysis in Sydney at Westmead Children's before his transplant, which was done live transplant donor with his dad. My husband gave him a kidney.
Okay, fair enough. Before we go further, because it's really a very complicated journey, how common, can I ask you about the
Yes.
condition? Does it have any nickname? Yeah, or is it
Okay, so I don't know nickname, but it's not common. I think my Josh was like the 36th kid in Australia diagnosed with it. However, what I will say to that is up until 1987, they did not know what this was, and none of the babies made
so it
it.
is a fairly new condition, definitely.
Yeah, yeah.
And you don't know how common, how rare it might be.
1 in 100,000 people. I don't know if that's 1 in
It is rare.
100,000. Yeah, yeah, very rare. Yeah, so it was a huge shock because obviously genetics is really complicated. I guess Josh had one of his kidneys removed when he was 6 months old. So the thinking around that was there was no kind of slowing down the disease, but maybe the impact wouldn't be as bad with 2 leaking kidneys. I don't know. It was all quite overwhelming. It's not that I regret that, but it's just kind of like weird because you have this baby and the next minute they're like removing organs. Like what do? He was very sick. It's kind of surreal to think about it because he was very ill. Like he was in hospital for years, very ill. So very complicated medical care. I remember one day when I was at the hospital and the nurse came in with a kidney dish, how ironic, with all his medicine like in it, like all the syringes and stuff. And she's like, "Oh, you'll be doing this one day." And I would just sit there and think, how will I ever do this? And now I can draw up his meds in my sleep because I know the pressure and how long to pull the syringe for his immunosuppressant. So yeah, so I think, we went through a few stages of like initially when he was diagnosed, he was very sick. He was really unwell. He was so unwell. We were living in Alice Springs and he flew to Adelaide. He was that unwell that the plane couldn't fly high. the plane had to fly at a certain way for the pressure. Like, it's kind of crazy. So initially they just got him stable, I guess, and then did his like treatment protocol, which was his diet, the medications, and he had an albumin infusion. We weren't artificially working his kidneys. He wasn't on dialysis, but the albumin kind of did the thing that his little body couldn't, which was like soak up this leaking protein to get rid of it. That's not the medical terms. It's very complicated, but that's the simple way to explain it. So I guess in that aspect, the impact on him, you know, sitting in a hospital, he was a big puffball. Like, he was fluid overloaded, and then he'd pee it out. So I'm sure you've seen someone distended belly with holding a lot of fluid. Like, he was a big puffball, like a little Michelin man, you know. He didn't walk till he was nearly 3 because he was.
There was a kid with this condition in NICU while we were in NICU.
I think kidney disease is like, again, you don't think kids have kidney disease or heart disease or cancer. And I guess that was my biggest eye-opener. Like, you don't think liver disease, like, people don't think kids have these diseases, but they do. The hospital is full of them. And the one great thing about kidney disease is you have 2 kidneys, so you can obviously function fine with 1 kidney. Transplants are a form of treatment. They're not necessarily a cure, but the technology in our journey, Josh is 12 years post-transplant, so even the technology and the medical science has already like moved and grown so much. We used to have to do bloods that was sent, I think, to Germany for some of his DNA and analysis. They can now do that in Sydney, here in Australia. You'd do bloods, they'd be sent to Germany, and a year later you'd go back and see the doctor, and now they can do them, I believe, at Westmead, and you can have results in a couple of weeks. So I guess, you know, the technology and the advance in that science and what can be done here in Australia versus overseas has like moved in leaps and bounds. So yeah.
Look, how has this condition impacted his life and your family's life? I mean, has he always been aware of this? When did you guys talk about this? How did you guys explain this to him?
Yeah, so I guess, again, when Josh had his transplant, his health, literally in a couple of weeks, he was like a new person. The way his body looked, he was always very pale and very white, and people used to say that to me, and I used to get really upset about it because I couldn't see it, because that's how he always looked to me. But then when he had his transplant, he obviously had that colour. So there's a lot of effects there. And to kind of answer your question as well, when you have a transplant and you have immunosuppressants, there was a lot of issues with his teeth and gums. So his teeth just looked terrible because they were just stripped of all the enamel because of all of the medication he'd had over the years. So he had these awful looking teeth. And I know people would like look at him, and I know they're like judging him and looking at his teeth and judging us. And I just think like, he's lucky to be alive, like leave us alone, you know, kind of, I guess, you know, to answer your question, how it affected our lives. We are so grateful that there was treatment. I always kind of, when I'm feeling a bit, I'm going to get a bit emotional, a bit sad about it. I think of all those families and all those babies before us that they didn't know anything, you know, like it's really sad. It's really awful. And I think even to think of doing transplants in kids, they have some rules, like a kid, they have to be over 10 kilos. So obviously all those sick babies that need organ transplants, they're too little, you know. They'll do it when it comes to like desperation, when there's no real other option. So, you know, you get, like for us, we just bought a house, we got married, we had this baby, we were like living our life, we had great jobs, and then we were just sitting in a hospital, like, and our life was just, and we were in Alice Springs, and I was sent to Adelaide. Like, I'd never been to Adelaide in my life. So I'm sitting in Adelaide with no support, no anything. And my husband's like, he's not just down the road at home. He's like 3,000 kilometers away. So it was quite an upheaval. I think when you're in it at that point of diagnosis, it's just like shock, and you just do the things like I said, when they'd bring him all the medicine and he had all the cords and everything on him and they'd bath him and stuff. I'd be like, I don't know how I don't know how to do this. Like, I'm not a nurse. Like, what do I do with the cords? Like it was really overwhelming. So yeah, so I guess overnight I was back at work too. He was 4 months old. So I had my dream job. Like, let's be honest, I was working in a organization. I had a work trip to London, and just I was so naive. When they told me, they gave me the whole, like, when I was at hospital when he was diagnosed, I'm kind of standing in the doctor's office, and I got the whole, like, take a seat, call your husband conversation, and I just thought I was grabbing a bag and going to Adelaide for a couple of days, like, I didn't know my life was changed. Yeah, so a lot of time in hospital, and I guess, to kind of compare it, I think when you're chronically ill, regardless, I guess germs are a big factor. Like, Josh actually got a cold from someone that turned into pneumonia because he was so sick. He wasn't immunocompromised, but he was so sick, like anything just, took him. Anytime he was sick, he'd be hospitalized with IV antibiotics, like, just never could be like sick as what I would have known as a kid, like have a Panadol, have a lay down, none of that. Whenever he was sick, straight to hospital, all the team would assess, all hands on deck kind of stuff. So yeah, like overnight went from living our life to my husband went to work because, you still have to pay the bills, and I became a carer, I guess, and spent, a lot of time in hospital. And then we moved to Brisbane just purely because my husband could change jobs. We went from 2 incomes to 1. We had a mortgage, like all the things, So, and then Josh had a lot of treatment, pretty much, 6 hours a day, every day of the week, having his albumin infusions in hospital, and then all his other appointments and stuff, and just did that up until transplant. Then we got through transplant and his health was yes, better. And then he was diagnosed with his intellectual disability and autism. So had another thing to figure out and deal with after all of getting through all that, we're like, oh, it's better now. It's going to be different. And then it was just like a whole, starting again in a different arena.
Yeah. Yeah. New diagnosis, new shock, new surreal. Is this, and it gives you the fear of this is not going to end, so what's coming next then?
Yeah,
what are they going to tell me next? It just gives you that sense of anxiety of the unknown. And you have a second child as well, right?
Yeah, so I have my daughter, she just turned 7, so there's a 10-year gap between our kids, and people will say to us, that's a fun mistake or something, but it was not a fun mistake. I had Jet at 42 years old naturally, so I was actually about to start genetic IVF. We tried for a long time to get pregnant and nothing really happened, so we're going to do the genetic thing, like that ticking time thing was happening, and I fell pregnant naturally. And then I had to have all the really invasive testing to test that everything was okay, which was just awful. Jet was actually born at 25 and a half weeks gestation, which was another
super preemie.
Yeah, she was I actually took Josh to clinic at Westmead, and because I was a geriatric pregnant lady, that was the medical term, being over 40. I think over 35 they call you a geriatric mama. So I took Josh to clinic in Sydney. I came back and I went to my specialist clinic in Canberra and for a scan for my 24-week scan, and I did my scan, and the scanning lady said call the doctor, and I'm like, oh, that's not good when they say call the doctor. And I had an open cervix. And because I was 24 weeks, I think at 20 weeks they can stitch you up, but I was 24 weeks, so I was put on bed rest, and then had another conversation with another doctor. It's called the grey zone. Sorry, this might be very triggering for people. So I had the conversation again about all of that. And I made it to 25 and a half weeks, and she spent 9 months in NICU at Canberra. So I coped with that very well. My poor husband didn't, but I guess the irony was I knew what I was in for, like living in a hospital, being away from home. Like, it wasn't my first rodeo. It's not ideal. It was a really hard time.
Yeah.
It's just
Nine
been
months.
her,
It's a
yeah,
second pregnancy, basically.
yeah, yeah. She was when she was born, I couldn't even hold her for 2 days. The first time I held her in her nest. She was in her nest from the humidity crib. And then I think on the third day we did the kangaroo thing, but she was like, she could fit in the palm of my hand. She was 800 grams. Yeah, so it was horrific. And yeah, I was in Canberra, which the hospital was amazing, but I didn't live in Canberra. I lived down on the far south coast. So again, I was like 300 k's away from home. And then we had to manage Josh at home doing all his stuff. Me in hospital with her. So yeah, it was a pretty full on experience because she had no medical issues. She was just prem. Well, she was a micro prem. So that was the issue. But yeah, she just turned 7, and she did break her arm as well this year. And because she's such a hypochondriac, not that I didn't believe her, but it's kind of weird to think now that I've kind of talked about this, because she's quite out there and outgoing. Like, she's always like out there, just like a normal kid. So, out there breaking her arm. She fell off the monkey bars at school, broke her arm. She'll always have a cut or a bruise because she's out and about. And I just think Josh just didn't do any of that at all, ever.
Yeah, so how does this, do they share things
They're,
like, because you couldn't experience this, let me do this for you?
I think because there's such a big age gap. So I guess again it's just normal. Like, he's the big brother, she's the little sister. She annoys him. She'll go in his room and he'll be like, "Get out," So nothing really like they have to teach or support each other. They're just siblings, but there's just that massive age gap.
How does she live Josh's condition? Like, I bet it's a normal for her, or does
Yeah,
she
it's normal.
struggle?
Yeah, yeah. It's weird because she's a real hypochondriac, and it's really hard for me to. She will have like the tiniest scratch, and she will fuss and cry and want a band-aid, and I just think it's really like messes with your head, because I think, am I different because of my medical exposure? What someone says is sick and what I say is sick is sometimes very different, what I would consider sick and unwell. So I have to really check myself with her. And then I think my Josh is so like cool and cruisy. And I just think if it was her with his disease, I don't know how she would have coped with all of that. Like, if she gets that funny over a scratch, like getting your ports accessed, like, oh, I don't know. Like, I don't even want to think about it. But yeah, I don't know if she knows. I guess the thing with siblings and with my experience, like with Josh with his intellectual disability and autism, we've had like NDIS, we get support workers and all of that. And I've always tried to find people that have siblings, because I find that they won't take any of his crap, and they don't coddle him, and they just treat him different. Like, yes, he needs support, and yes, he has some things we need to look after in his medicine and all of that. So, and some people just get it, and some people are like a bit funny with him. And I guess like with Jet, I think this is all just our normal. That's the only way I can explain it. I often say to people, probably, sorry to answer your real question at the start, is we live like everyone went through COVID. We live like that all the time. Anti-germs, hand washing. If someone's at the supermarket and they cough, I'm like, Josh, get here. Like, we have lived like that, because when you're immunosuppressed, and even before his transplant, like, because we're always at hospital, and it was always good. Even if you go to hospital every day for treatment, it's so good to go home. It's so good to sleep in your own bed. Like, the little things matter. So when you're sick, I really try and avoid hospital as much as I can. So I really enjoyed COVID because I'm like, finally everyone can like have a go at what my life is like and understand how easy a virus can be transmitted and impact people. But that's just how we live, like, and I guess a lot of people in our world with their kids that have had a really serious illness or have a disease, they live like that. So
Yeah. It's really triggering me when I see that people just in public toilets, they completely forgot the COVID good things like wash your hands, and they don't even care about washing their hands. And that is so triggering as a medical mama, because you're like,
yeah,
how
yeah,
can I tell you gently, respectfully, without showing that I'm taking this so incredibly personal? You're not
yeah.
washing your hands. What's wrong with you?
Yeah, it's really hard because I think people are so selfish and ignorant, especially all the anti-vaxxers that, were kind of going on about that. It's like you're kind of, it's not about you, it's about protecting the vulnerable, it's about protecting the elderly. Like, I think it was kind of weird, COVID, how there was such a divide and such mistrust in the medical system. And I just think, don't you ever dare turn up to emergency again in your life. I'm being a bit on my high horse here, but do you know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
These doctors are saving lives. They've dedicated their lives. They've spent 10 years studying, and you're just going to be some keyboard doctor with your point of view. I think when you have, especially a genetic disease, the human body, like, even genetics, there's so much we still need to learn. There's so much we don't know. And it's just such a complicated, we are very complicated walking beings. Like, it is so complicated. And I think people are lucky that they don't have to ever think about the complications of just being a human being.
It is
Yeah.
very personal, because as medical mamas, we know, and it sort of resembles, like you were mentioning, that when you have support team, you want them exposed to siblings so that they can treat Josh like a person and
Yes.
empower him. But sometimes if you don't have the right mindset, it might be a language that you don't know, that you're not
Yeah.
exposed, that you're not aware of. So how do you sort of empower him? Because I'm trying to get also to this influencer, and how your journey with Josh's challenges, what made you think, okay, you know what, this influencer, what element of your journey inspired that?
Okay, well, I guess I started a business, gosh, over 10 years ago. I think when Josh was about 3, I accidentally started a business. I had an app, had a tech company, because I wanted to work. I wanted to do something. I wanted to have some purpose. I just could not sit in a hospital and twiddle my thumbs. I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's like, I spent a long time working and climbing that corporate ladder just for it to be like, bye, gone. So I started a business and built that business, sold that business. I was very burnt out with this influencer. Josh obviously spends a lot of time on his iPad, and he's quite a creative. He'll make TikToks and use CapCut. So I was kind of just doing my thing. I was working as a bit of a business coach, advisor, financial counselor for business during COVID. So I did that for a bit, and then I had this whisper in my kind of soul that I ignored for a long time about doing something in the disability space. I didn't know. I didn't really want to start a business because starting a business is really, really hard, and it's very hard to start a business, and I've got 2 kids. So I kind of found social entrepreneurship, social enterprise, which is about impact. And I guess from my network, one of my friends Tracy, her daughter Katie's got Down syndrome, and you'll see her, she's on our website. She loves fashion. So I just kind of thought, there's these kids that love fashion and love design and creativity. Where are their pathways and opportunities? Like my Josh is not going to go to university, and I don't say that disrespectfully, but he's not going to go to university. But he's in his room creating content online. He doesn't have to go to university.
I don't think all influencers and social media gurus have a university degree, so I don't really
Well, they
think.
don't. Yeah, they don't. The
Okay.
influencers I manage don't. But yeah, so I thought it initially started with, I've got a marketing background. I've got a degree in graphic design. I love marketing. I love tech. I know digital. I know disability. I know branding and marketing. So I know how to work with the families and the people. I know how to work with the businesses and brands. And back to that social enterprise, it's about impact. So when businesses and brands work with us, that allows us to offer opportunities and paid employment to people with disabilities. Yeah, I thought initially I thought I'd do content for brands, and I pitched to a few brands, and none of them were supposed to say yes, and they all did. And then from that, I'm like, you know what, I can do. Doing that was very hard to do. Like, it was super cool, but really hard to do. And then I thought I could do a stock library that's brand agnostic, that any brand could use the stock imagery. So that's kind of where we've landed. And then once we work with people, they come onto our books, we can represent them as talent and put them forward for TV commercials and all of that kind of stuff. So that's where this influencer came about. But yeah, I sat on it for a long time. I really thought about it because I thought, you know what, I have to do this and work in this space as a professional, but also I'm a mum, and I really have to check myself because in my day-to-day advocacy and life can just seem unfair, and I can't lose it while I'm at work. I have to be professional. I have to think, if everything goes pear-shaped with Josh's health, how can I still do this? If I'm dealing, I've been speaking to someone just yesterday who works in the disability space, is very well funded by the government, but doesn't have any disability imagery in any of their content. And they were telling me that they don't need that. Now, I have to hear that and just think that is like the most craziest thing I've ever heard, right? It's like mental gymnastics. I really have to manage my mindset and the way I think and feel and kind of compartmentalize that, because I do come across that with work sometimes and I don't understand. And I feel like I've made something for you that's like, bam, bam, super easy for you to access and use and our images are beautiful, beautiful images. And I just think like, that's crazy. And then as the mum of the disabled kid, I have those barriers because I'm dealing with people and organizations that obviously don't understand disability and have no lived experience and are trying to tell me things that I'm just like, you know what, that's just no. So you know
Like
what I mean, right?
people not washing their hands in the toilets after a pandemic all over again. It's just a
That,
conversation that has bumps over bump over bump because you're like, are you freaking serious? And then they might organize even, are you okay days and da, 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 and they're completely unaware of the conversation you're trying to start with your agency and
yeah,
say, represent this as well.
yes,
Because this as well is the word out there, which is
yes,
the word that bangs you on the face when it happens to you as a new parent because nobody told you, because they are not buying stock images. It's a circle.
yeah,
So I love how with your agency, you're doing it with the skills and knowledge but you're trying to break that cycle. You're trying to get into
yeah,
that and create a new turn of the conversation.
yeah,
And it must
yeah,
be really draining because you're still fighting with the same
yeah.
circle.
It is draining. And you know what else is draining? I work with organizations that are doing incredible stuff, but they don't tell anyone about it because they're scared to. I've worked with organizations that have sensory rooms and they've changed the lighting in their building and they've done really cool things, but they don't tell anyone about it because they don't want to upset people because of the stigma of saying, we've got these things. Like, it's crazy. It's really hard work. I think disability is the last frontier to conquer, and we have a lot of awareness about things, but 1 in 5 people have a disability. Almost all the hidden disabilities are people with autism. it is a spectrum. So you have people that are superstars that are autistic, and then you have people that are autistic that need help to be fed and showered. You know, it's very complicated, and I think disability is represented as the blue wheelchair symbol. Like, disability isn't someone in a wheelchair. Disability is complex, but disability is also beautiful. It's a natural human experience. We ask them their dietary requirements. We ask if people are gluten free, but we don't ask people what access or support they need. Like, it's crazy.
And most of all, a disability is not only congenital conditions. Disability could happen to any of us in any moment
Anytime.
of our lives.
Yeah.
Even if you were born white, male, privileged.
Yeah.
You never know. You never know.
That's
This
right.
might become your word very soon. And once it does, you learn so many things. And you learn a completely different language, and you have a completely different lens
Yes.
in front to see what's actually happening around you. So I would like to ask you, Simone, what would you say, your word of advice for any new parent, young or geriatric, whatever? I just take those terms and I flick them off my shoulder. But what would you tell them if they are in that situation? They just got that diagnosis, or they got it some time ago and they're still not coping with it. What would you say to them?
I would say find your people. So when Josh was diagnosed, and this is a very long time ago, 18 years ago now, I and Josh, like we've talked about, every disease is unique. If our kids had the same congenital nephrotic syndrome Finnish type, this is another thing that kind of drives me wild. And TV shows where people have kidney transplants in 2 days, but we won't go there. Every kind of prognosis and treatment is different. We could have the same disease, but we could have different treatments. So let's just put that out there. And I say that because it is so unique, but you can find your people. So when Josh was diagnosed, there was no resources or information in Australia. I went to the kidney organisations. They were all kind of geared towards adults. I've got this little tiny baby with tubes coming out of him everywhere. Like, what do? I found a forum in the US that I posted on for that particular disease. Mum in Canada connected me with 2 mums in Brisbane, and they have been like my friends ever since. And then I was in a few of those groups, found my people, and then like I ended up moving to Brisbane, and my good friend Vicky, who, you know, we're friends now. We don't talk about kidney stuff. We can if we need to, but we've formed a friendship over the years, you know, that's got nothing to do with our kids' kidney disease. So I think find your people, but don't let it overtake your life. Like, life does go on. Like I said, I kind of got the itch. It's kind of crazy to think I started a business when Josh was having daily treatment, but you know, I had my laptop, so I'd just go to hospital, set up, I'd be on my laptop, and that's what I do now. You know, he's just both the kids at school. I work school hours. You know, I've kind of made it work, and it gives me purpose and joy. So it'll be a while. Like, it does take over your life for a bit, but once you kind of get your head around it, like, life goes on, and you can choose. I always talk about there's a thing called post-traumatic growth. I remember when Josh was diagnosed, we got sat down by a psychiatrist. This is our first kind of, I've never seen a psychiatrist before, but we pretty much got told, you know, you'll lose your house, you'll lose your job, you know, marriage is not going to last. Like, this isn't good, right? It's like, gee, thanks. And then I've kind of always think of like post-traumatic stress, post-traumatic growth. You can have this horrendous thing impact your life, but you can grow from it in a positive way. Post-traumatic growth is a real thing, and I think it takes a lot to manage your mind. Don't go down the crazy rabbit holes. Like, find your peeps, do your thing, and look forward, and you can still live a great life. You know, you just have things a bit different you have to deal with, but it doesn't have to be. For a while that might seem like the be all and end all. I always remember a nurse used to say to me when Josh was little, her daughter, she had a disability, but she said to me, like, you'll wake up and all you'll think about is this thing. It'll just consume your thoughts. And then she goes, one day you'll wake up and you'll think, I didn't think about that today. And I used to always think like, because I would just like be thinking kidneys and trying to learn about kidneys and medicine and all the things. And then I'm just like, one day I'm just like, and even now, like, all these years later, I'm just like, I don't really think about kidneys any day of the week, Like I'm having this conversation. I haven't talked about that story or that journey, which is so pertinent to my life. But until I have a conversation like this, I don't forget, but it's like so long ago, my day-to-day life has got, like, yes, he has his immunosuppressants. Yes, we're like the germ police religiously washing our hands, but that's just our normal. It's got nothing to do with like, oh my God, he's had a transplant and we don't want anyone to be sick. That's just what we do,
Yeah. It's a beautiful message, actually. Also, you taught me a lot during this conversation, but I'm definitely going to look into the post-traumatic growth because I've never heard of it. I think I can
That is like a clinical term, right? Back to what you were saying. I get the medical people are they're very medical. They're not going to give you false hope. They're very clinical, I guess I should say. But I wish I wish I didn't see a psychiatrist, and I wish I said someone say to me, this is going to be really hard, but there's like silver to this dark cloud. Look for that. Have hope. No one said that to me. I had to find that, crawl for that. I craved for that. So I think if I can share that for others, always look for hope. It's hard. It's awful. No one will understand. It turns your world upside down, but it also can be beautiful and magical. And you need to look for the beauty in it as well.
Yeah, yeah. Simone, we can find you on socials. Duh!
I am on the socials, yes.
Is your agency open? So if anyone listens to this interview or watches it on YouTube and they would like to, I don't know, introduce their child to you for representation or themselves for representation, how does that work?
If you just go to my Instagram profile, the link in bio, we've got the sign up for talent. It is a gigantic form. I always warn people because I know we all hate filling out forms. But if I put you forward for a TV commercial, I need to know your shoe size. So the dream is that anyone can sign up. Everyone's welcome. Everyone and their dog is welcome. I manage a few dogs, including my own therapy dog. The dream is to have everyone on my books have a professional portfolio done by myself or someone else. And that's a big task that I thought I would have had done last year, but I haven't completed that yet. And next year I want to do more work within the academy on how to be safe online, how to build a personal brand, how to do flat lays. Like I want to develop it more so you don't necessarily have to be on a TV commercial or be a talent in my stock library, but you might want to learn how to do iPhone photography or do something creative. So we're going to do more of that next year. So please sign up. When you sign up, you'll get some email information. And then, I'm hoping to develop more opportunities, learning work within, I've called it the Academy next year. So sign up. Everyone's welcome.
Lovely, lovely. Simone, thank you so much for your precious time. Really precious.
Thanks for having me.
A pleasure. And I hope to come and see you in person soon, or next time you come to Sydney. We can just hang and, fight the conversations we don't like together.
Yeah, let's do that. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks for having me so much.
Simone, thank you so much. And to everyone else, stay safe. Ciao.
Bye.